aims. In the law, Arizona Learns, it refers to aims. So law has to take that out. State Board of Education has already adopted the Common Core. So that's already been adopted several years ago as outcomes. But the Arizona Learns law itself still has the word aims in it. So we know that we cannot assess these new, more rigorous measures with an old aims test. So we need to, that is one thing that needs to be removed from the law. We also know that we don't want to use this as a graduation requirement, as a high stakes test. That in fact the State Board of Education has suggested that instead it would be part of an end of course test. So kind of like the old finals that we used to take, or I used to take when we were in high school. So it's a different, so eliminating or taking out the high stakes test piece is part of this need to change this law. And there's a third element to it, and that is no longer requiring a norm reference test, which enables Arizona to compare itself across the country with other states to see how we're doing. We would take that out of the law. Those are three things. Otherwise, if that isn't removed, we continue to assess with aims plus another assessment. That's going to be expensive, hugely expensive for the state of Arizona, and it's distracting to our teachers who now are not only in the trenches trying to make this change for their staff, but we've got this whole element of evaluation looming over this whole thing. Teacher evaluation, administrator evaluation has an element of achievement on these outcomes. So you can see that our educators are caught right in the middle of this transition, and that's basically what the controversy is now.
And more importantly than teachers being in the middle of it, students are.
Thank you.
So please remember, it would be like taking Spanish all year, and for the final, you're given the German final. So please help educate people to understand these standards are already in place. Students are already responsible for demonstrating mastery. To continue to use an assessment that is not aligned to those standards makes no sense whatsoever to students. So as you're doing, and we're happy to sit down and talk with you at length if you need more information about that. But I can't stress enough, this is not about teachers, this is not about adults. This is what's going to happen to students as a result of adult actions. So if we need to educate or talk, I will, as long as there's however much time you need, I would be happy to sit down, and I know Nicolle and all of my colleagues, we're very concerned about the impact on students this will have.
Okay. Susan, one other comment. I know that our chamber has signed on, and the EVCCA, the East Valley Chamber of Commerce Alliance, which we are spearheading those efforts this year, have signed on in support of the Common Core. And we have made that very clear to our legislators.
Well, the interesting thing,
I have him on speed dial.
He's a good guy, I know. The interesting thing is that we have had standards around, as I say, since I was teaching kindergarten. That was many years ago. We now have, these standards have changed over time, and now there's a name put on the top of it because of this group of states that have gotten together. And it's that name on the top of it that if you took it off, it still sets standards. So, yes.
I think people around here, around these tables, certainly understand about assessment and what they have to do at the end of the week or at the end of the month or at the end of the year. There has to be a profit. So assessment is important, and we all agree it's something that we all look at hopefully very positively. Now, my feeling is for teachers, and I have a high respect for teachers, certainly Chandler in Kyrene District, but could there be a process of assessing our students at the beginning of the week and the end of the week, just as they would be assessed for the one day at the end of the year, so that they're very comfortable with assessment? Because I think the hardest thing for students is, the most important test of your whole life. Now, don't screw this up. Now, do you know how to do this? And it's like, I know there was an assessment for the Ames test 100 years ago when that came out in the English area. And it was a very different kind of a way that assessment was done ever. And so teachers had to be taught a different method, and they couldn't leave that to the students at the test day, because it's like, well, firstly, instead of bubbles, you do the square. Instead of square, you do the circle. And it's just like, so if we could assess our students at the beginning of the week and the end of the week, just as they would be assessed at the end of the year, so we don't have test anxiety. so that the student is very comfortable with that. Because to me, the worst thing we can do is hold back a student a year, especially if all kinds of.
And the research is pretty clear that that's an ineffective intervention, so
It's
much better to help the student be successful.
It's the worst thing you could do. And I'm the person that they wanted to hold back in third grade. I went to 4 different schools in 1 year, and my mother said no. Thank God, in the olden days, she said no. And I have my doctorate degree. So fortunately, if she did that back then, I probably would be sitting with a high school diploma. Not that that's bad, that's a very good thing. But now I have my doctorate degree. But if you can test them all the time, it won't be a shock at the end of the year.
And thank you for saying that, because I think that's exactly the place that we have reached in the last several years as we've looked at the implications here, is we can't wait till the end to figure out if kids are going to be successful. So both Chandler and Kyrene have developed larger scale tests, which are district level, so that we are at least 3 times a year, much like Park.
Daily, it has to be done
daily.
daily.
Let me get to that. Give me a second, we're getting there. Because we still have to instruct kids, and we don't want it to take away from instruction. We want this to be part of the instructional process, so that you're getting small bits of information frequently to make adjustments in the moment. You're not waiting 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 18 weeks to make adjustments when a student is struggling and not on track. And so we do have assessments, especially in reading, that do look at kids who especially have demonstrated that they are deficient on a weekly basis. And thanks to technology support in our community, with our technology override, we're able to do that electronically and capture it. So as soon as we sit down with the student, we have that information of what's working, what's not working. We have additional supports, instructional supports that can be generated. Chandler has the same tool that provides explicit instruction around those specific skills in reading. Those tools don't exist for everything yet, so if you're out there and you're working on innovating, if you would do the same thing for us in math, we would love it. Because we do not have that same support, and the research and the tools are not out there in the area of math like they are in reading. We have so many years of research, we have got that down to an art, but we don't have the support in math, and that would be a great thing I would love to partner with somebody on. Of how to do that and capture that. But you're exactly right. It is looking on a very frequent basis, having those very clear benchmarks, short term, what we call short cycle, because the end of the year is too late to find out.
We're hearing more and more about adaptive learning.
Yes.
And so how do you see that in the K-12 system?
It's very much like what I was just describing. Is adaptive learning is all about getting an intervention at the time you need it, and in real time. So when we talk about adaptive software, much like some of the tools that we just talked about here, it is a student potentially who needs assistance in say, reading or math that has the opportunity to spend some time working at their instructional level, because it's different than their 30 colleagues in the classroom. And as they're working through that support, whether it's electronically or with a human being, it is saying, when I answer this question, the technology helps me know I need to go here next or here next based on the result. If you took a GRE as a graduate record exam, those types of tests, same thing. When you answered this, you got the next question you were given was based on the answer you just gave. And so it's applying that same logic to the work that we do. But again, it's on a scale of, in our case, 18,000, in their case, 40,000 students. So it's thinking about the supports that we can do with technology and development. And I will tell you, we need more people. At the same time we've been trying to roll all this out, of course, the funding to schools has been reduced significantly. And as we try to meet an individual student's needs, when you're talking on these kinds of scales, 1 person to 30 is not going to be able to do that. So technology allows us to do it better, but we definitely, the volunteerism, many of you already volunteer in the schools, and you have matching programs to encourage people to participate in the schools. But again, if we can train and work with adults to work with more kids in small group setting, much like what Susan was talking about, when we need to intervene with somebody, I can't do that with 30 kids, but if I'm working with 5 students, I can meet the needs of 5 students much more explicitly than I can in a large group. So those are the types of things I would say that we're looking at, and certainly with the Education Coalition, those are the types of things that we're saying would be a great benefit to us.
You had a question before you went to your hospital event.
Yeah,
And actually, I have a question I need to get back to.
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry, because I got to run through another meeting, unfortunately. I just want to comment on the Common Core. We're in a global world. In Chandler's blessed, we have 2 great school districts, but even those school districts know that the bar has to continue to be raised. And when we make announcements like GM, where there's 1,000 new jobs, they come here because they feel they can get the employees. But the challenge is continuing to go on. And when companies look at Arizona and they hear the doom and gloom about our education system, and you have legislators that have their heads in the sand, and sorry, John left. John's not one of them. John, there's the other people.
There's others.
There's the other people down at the legislature, and as a nice, like you say, the tin hat people, tinfoil people. But it's really important that we're able to judge ourselves against other states, and to be able to, we go out and try and solicit new jobs to the market, not just moving jobs from one city to the other, because I don't believe in that. But it's really important to have those standards be able to be measured, and people need to get away from this, Agenda 21 garbage that's going on at the legislature. And I think it's talking to your legislators, not just in Chandler, but around the state. And people have friends around the state. You need to get to some of those people that really need to understand how education, without these standards, that our companies aren't going to come here. They're going to go to Texas, and they're going to go to Colorado, and they're going to go to Utah. And we face that every day, so we're already at a disadvantage when we have a system that is being attacked from people that just don't have an understanding.
And it's being here today, it's being involved, even if you don't talk to your legislators, which we hope that you do, it's talking to your neighbors about what's going on. It's saying, calling us and saying, we need more information, or can we come in and see what's really going on in your state? We've been very fortunate to have a good partnership in Chandler, and we want to continue that. And this is, as Councilman Member Human said, it's a critical time for us. And so,
We have one final question back here.
I work at Mesa Community College. I'm early childhood. I work closely with our elementary people, so I